Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Very warm welcome to this Monday, 20th November 2023 morning Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam discussion. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 2. Before we discuss on this verse, let's sing Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopichana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopichana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Shri Radhe Jai Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Shri Radhe Jai Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Shrotra Shatashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki Jai Vrindavan Dham ki Jai Mathura Dham ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai Ganga Mai ki Jai Yamuna Mai ki Jai Tulsi Devi ki Jai Bhakti Devi ki Jai Samved Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Krishne Matirastu. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 2. Canto 3 is entitled The Status Quo. The verse is hitvā ayaṁ mantra-kṛd bhagavān akhileśvaraḥ pauravendra-gṛhaṁ hitvā praviveśātmasāt kṛtam. Hitvā ayaṁ mantra-kṛd bhagavān akhileśvaraḥ pauravendra-gṛhaṁ hitvā praviveśātmasāt kṛtam. Hitvā ayaṁ mantra-kṛd bhagavān akhileśvaraḥ pauravendra-gṛhaṁ hitvā praviveśātmasāt kṛtam. Word by word, yet, the house, why, what else is there to say? I am Śrī Kṛṣṇa, mantra-kṛd, minister, vaha, you people, bhagavān, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, akhileśvaraḥ, the Lord of everything, pauravendra, Duryodhana, gṛhaṁ, house, hitvā, giving up, praviveśā, entered, atmasāt, identify with oneself, kṛtam, so accepted. Translation: what else is there to say about the residential house of the Pāṇḍavas? Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the Lord of everything, acted as your minister. He used to enter that house as if it were his own, and he did not take any care of Duryodhana's house. Purport by His Divine Grace Śrīla A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. According to the Gaudiya Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva philosophy, anything which satisfies the senses of the Supreme Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa is also Śrī Kṛṣṇa. For example, Śrī Vrindavan Dham is non-different from Śrī Kṛṣṇa, Tad Dhama Vrindavanam. Because at Vrindavana, the Lord enjoys the transcendental bliss of his internal potency. Similarly, the house of the Pāṇḍavas was also the source of transcendental bliss for the Lord. It is mentioned here that the Lord identified the house with his own self. Thus, the house of the Pāṇḍavas was as good as Vrindavana, and Vidura should not have given up that place of transcendental bliss. Therefore, the reason for his quitting the house was not exactly family misunderstanding. Rather, Vidura took the opportunity to meet Rishi Maitreya and discuss transcendental knowledge. For a saintly person like Vidura, any disturbance due to worldly affairs is insignificant. Such disturbances, however, are sometimes favorable for higher realization, and therefore Vidura took advantage of a family misunderstanding in order to meet Maitreya Rishi. Before we discuss on this verse, let us offer some prayers. Om Jnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Namashreshtham Manamapi Shachiputram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Murupurim Mathurim Goshthavati Radha Kundam Girivaram Aho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakhan Vitamscha Adarandastridam Dante Idam Yacha Punah Punah Shriman Rupa Padambhojam Dhulisyam Janma Janmani He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi pranamami haripriye. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto 3 entitled The Status Quo, Text 1, Chapter 1, Text 2. Yadva ayaṁ mantra-kṛd bhagavān akhileśvaraḥ pauravendra-gṛhaṁ hitvā praviveśātmasāt kṛtam. What else is there to say about the residential house of the Pāṇḍavas? Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the Lord of everything, acted as your minister. He used to enter that house as if it were his own, and he did not take any care of Duryodhana's house. So, this particular verse is the discussion between Mahatma Vidur and Maitreya Rishi. And we are calling Vidura as Mahatma Vidur because Vidura surrendered himself at the lotus feet of Śrī Kṛṣṇa. So it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavad Gita, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gyanvan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. So there is a definition of Mahatma or great soul given in Śrīmad-Bhāgavad Gita itself by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa himself. So the definition of a great soul is that one surrenders on to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mam prapadyate. So this prapadyante. So namam dushkritino mudha prapadyante naradhama. So whoever are in a sinful state of mind, they unfortunately are not able to surrender on to Krishna. We saw that unfortunately in the case of Duryodhana, who is also mentioned in this verse. So we have two opposite types of personalities being mentioned here. One personality is Mahatma Vidura, who is totally surrendered on to Śrī Kṛṣṇa, and another personality is Duryodhana, who is who never recognized Krishna, even in terms of his greatness of his existence as the king of Dwaraka. Even that respect was not even shown by Duryodhana. So this is the unfortunate situation of someone who is in a sinful state of existence. So this is harava bhaktasya kuto mahadgunat manorathena sato dhavato bahi. So it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that the person who is not in the devotional frame of mind of Krishna, what good qualities such a person can have. Why? Because mana rathena asato dhavato bahi. One is riding on the chariot of mind, which is the mind which is just attached to sense gratification. That is the unfortunate situation of the material mind. But when that material mind is offered onto the lotus feet of the Lord, it becomes spiritual. So this is the and this is what is mentioned. Srila Prabhupada mentions the purport as well of this verse. He says that whatever is associated with the Lord is actually Lord himself, directly associated with the Lord. So tad dhama vrindavanam. Aradhyo bhagavān vrajeshatanaya tad dhama vrindavanam. So it is mentioned in the scriptures that the worshipable Lord is the son of Vraja Isha, the ruler of Vrindavan, that is Nanda Maharaj, Nanda Nandana, that is another name of Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Nandana means the son. So Yashoda Nandana, so the son of Mother Yashoda. This is what Krishna likes. Krishna likes being associated with his devotees. And that relationship that Krishna and the devotees have is transcendental. It is totally spiritual. There is no trace of material ingredient in it, not even an iota of material ingredient. That is spiritual world, where so nimeshardhakyo va vrajati nahi yatrapi samaya. So this is the katha ganam natyam gamanam api vamshi priya sakhi. It is mentioned in Brahma Samhita that katha ganam, any type of talk, is like a song. Katha ganam natyam gamanam api. Whatever walk is happening is like a dance. Every talk is a song. Every walk is a dance. Vamshi priya sakhi. And the flute that Śrī Kṛṣṇa holds on his lips is his sakhi, is his best friend. And so everything in the spiritual world is totally spirit. That is the wonderful nature of the spiritual world. There is no matter. That is the difference between the material world and spiritual world. In the material world, the only thing that we always grossly see through our gross material eyes is matter. We do not have the eyes to see the spirit in the material world unless one has that spiritual knowledge. That is called jnana chakshusha. The eyes, the transcendental spiritual knowledge will give one the eyes to see the spirit in the material world. And when one sees spirit in the material world, then even though one is in the material world, one is not part of the material world. The example given is that of Padma Patra Ivambhasa. So the lotus flower, it might be in a very in a place which is not pure. There might be some filthy conditions where the lotus flower is present, but the lotus flower is unaffected by the filth that happens around it. It is so beautiful in itself that, and if we look at the petals of the lotus flower, they have a way by which the water or anything that touches them does not affect them. So they have a kind of layer of covering, and this is the spiritual covering that. So we can either be under the influence of the material covering, or we could be under the influence of the spiritual covering. So when we are under the influence of material covering, what is happening is we are getting tossed in the ocean of birth and death. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janini jatare shayanam. As Srila Shankaracharya mentions in Bhajagovindam, this is the unfortunate nature of this material world. And that's why it's called Bhava Sagar. So it is an ocean of birth and death. Sagar is ocean and Bhava is continuous cycle of birth and death. So it's a continuous cycle of ocean of birth and death. So this loving devotional service to Krishna is the panacea for coming out of all the different trials and tribulations that we have in this material world. Padam padam yat vipadam na tesham. So that is what is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, that samashritaye padapallava plavam, samyak rupena ashrita. When someone has taken total shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna and taking it as a ship to cross across the ocean of birth and death, padapallava plavam mahat padam punya yasho murare. And so Krishna's another name is Mura Ari. Mura plus Ari. Mura is the demon Mura. Ari means his enemy. So this is another wonderful thing that is happening in Krishna's names. Krishna, even in terms of his enemies, his name is, he has got the names in association with his enemies as well, right? And this is a wonderful nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Again, we can see here how the Lord is totally not partial to anyone. So even if we look at Krishna's name as Murare, Kamsare, enemy of Kamsa. So Keshava, so Keshi demon. All this. So here, what we can see here is, as Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu. So he is equal to all the living entities. So he has got his name in association with his enemies as well. And this is the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's why he says he's equal to all the living entities. And these enemies, they were always remembering Krishna in an antagonistic way, in a way to kill Krishna. But again, there is this beautiful verse in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Kama Dveshat Bhayat Snehat. So Bhayat, even if someone is, or Dveshat, so someone is always remembering Krishna. So the most important concept or the reality here is that one has to always remember Krishna. Yena tena prakarena mana Krishne niveshayet. By one way or another, somehow or other, one has to keep Krishna in mind. Sarve vidhi nishedasyo retayor eva kinkara. So it is mentioned in the scriptures that all the other rules and regulations is subservient to this main rule. What is the main rule? Some way or the other, remember Krishna. And of course, it is better to remember Krishna in a positive way rather than in a negative way. That's why anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktiruttama. So anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktiruttama. This is the definition of Srila Rupa Goswami about the topmost devotional service. Uttama bhakti. Uttama word means udgata tama. So the whole existence in this material world is on the basis of the ignorance is unfortunately the platform. What is ignorance? Ignorance is our lack of knowledge of our eternal nature. That is ignorance. Nothing else is ignorance. All the other types of ignorance is material ignorance. Like if someone is not knowing about a particular subject, like physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, or whatever is learned in the schools and colleges and universities, it's all related to material objects. And that is, of course, for a human being to survive, that knowledge is needed. But it's not something that is going to help one to come out of the cycle of birth and death. Because that is the most unfortunate situation that all the living entities, conditioned living entities in this whole universe are in. The unfortunate unlimited cycle of birth and death that one is going through. And in every species of life, one is constantly accumulating all the sensory perceptions. And some sensory perceptions are making one feel elated, and some sensory perceptions are making one feel dejected. So one is always wanting to have those sensory perceptions that cause oneself happiness, and one runs away from the sensory perceptions that cause some kind of difficulty. So that's why the yoga in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, it is mentioned about the pancha kleshas, and the 5 kinds of difficulties or the challenges that the conditioned living entity has. And the first challenge is avidya. Avidya is ignorance. That's what we are saying about. So ignorance of and our understanding that I am eternal. I am eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Mama eva amsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, all the living entities in this whole universe are my eternal part and parcels. Eternally, sanatana. Manaha shashrani indriyani prakritisthani karshati. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that when one identifies oneself with the mind and the 5 senses, and the mind is called the 6th sense. So when there is identification, there is struggle in this material universe. Karshati. Karshati means struggle. Why there is struggle? When I identify myself with the mind and the five senses. And that identification is caused because of ignorance. If we have real knowledge, then we know that the only reality is my eternal nature and my eternal relationship with Krishna. There is nothing other, no other reality. But unfortunately, in the conditioned state of existence, what happens is we are considering that the sensory perceptions is the only reality. There is no other reality other than that. But of course, being in the present moment is extremely important. Being in the present moment and noticing everything without judgment is extremely important. What happens is that every moment when we are looking at something or doing something or engaging in any activity, we are always in the mode of judgment. This person, I'm doing this good, I'm doing that bad, this person is doing that good, that person is doing that bad. So that judging nature is always there. Instead of that, if we just be observer, sakshi bhava it is called. That is the word used in the scriptures, sakshi bhava. So that means just being an observer. You don't need to judge anything, or you don't need to side on one side or side on the other side. Be an observer. And when we are being an observer, we are in that state of eternal existence. That is free from any kind of judgment of what is happening. Because for judging, Krishna is always there. Krishna in the form of Paramatma is upadrashta anumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti cha apyukto dehesmin purusha para. It is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita by Krishna. Who is that Purusha Para? The transcendental person. There is a transcendental person within each and every living entity. And that transcendental person is Paramatma. Param Atma, the supreme soul, super soul. So, what is the super soul doing? Upadrashta, overseeing everything. Anumanta, then the super soul is permitting. So, if the living entity under the influence of the false ego thinks that he is the doer. So, ahankara vimudhatma karta hamiti manyate. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. Yah pashyati tathatmanam akartaram sapashyati. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, that all the activities are being done by the modes of material nature. In Prakriti. So there is mode of goodness, because of which somehow or other we have this inclination to understand. We are in that platform of understanding our original eternal nature. That is mode of goodness. Mode of passion, rajasa lobha mevacha. It is lobha. So it is one is hankering to have material things. So that is mode of passion. And then mode of ignorance is pramada moho tamaso bhavato ajnanam evacha. So that is does not want to do anything. One is just totally lazy or totally in a state of mind, intoxicated state of mind, which is material intoxication. Of course, there is the spiritual intoxication, which is the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so when one is involved in, totally absorbed in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, bhuvi vilutama natama nirvishama. Parivadato jano yatho tatho yatha tatho va nanu mukharo vadati vayamna vicharayama hari rasa madira madati matta bhuvi vilutama natama nirvisham. It is very beautifully mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami. He mentions about the state of intoxication with the holy names of the Lord. That is the topmost state one can exist in, when one is totally absorbed in the holy names of the Lord. So in that state, Srila Rupa Goswami mentions that the person is not bothered about anyone else. Just like when one is materially intoxicated, one is not bothered about the outside world, because unfortunately one is in a materially intoxicated state. The symptoms of spiritual intoxication is also the same, but it is at the highest level, topmost level. One is at the lower than ignorance level, and another is at the transcendental level. And seemingly both would seem to be quite similar. But internally, everything is totally different. This is the wonderful nature. So there, it is Sri Rupa Goswami saying about that parivadatu jano yatho tatova. People can say whatever they want to say. Nanu mukharo vadati vayam na vicharayama. They can say whatever they want, because there is a saying in Hindi language which says that jitne muh utni baatein. So what it means is how many mouths are there, that many amount of talking will happen, because everyone is seeing the world with their own perspective, and everyone would see one particular incident, and their interpretation of that incident would depend on their own conditioned state of existence. Whatever conditioned state they are in, that would be their interpretation of whatever they are seeing. So if there are thousands of people, there would be thousands of views and opinions, but I am not going to be bothered about them. Nanu mukharo vadati vayam na vicharayama. I'm not going to think anything about them. Whatever they want to say, let them say. Hari rasa madira madati matta. What am I going to do? I'm going to get intoxicated with the holy names of Hari. Madira. Madira is actually intoxication. One is having that intoxicant. Hari rasa madira. That is the total absorption in the holy names of the Lord. Madati matta. Totally intoxicated. Bhuvi vilutama natama nirvishama. I'll roll on the ground, I'll dance, and I'll totally be in ecstasy. So this is the wonderful nature of the pure devotees of the Lord. They are totally always in that state of remembering the Lord. And in that state, they are totally ecstatic. This is what Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Mat chitta madgat prana. So the mind is totally absorbed in me. That's what Krishna says. Madgat prana. That life force is given to me. So one of the things that we have to understand is wherever the attention goes, there the energy flows. So our energy, whatever things we are giving attention to, that's where we are giving our energy also to. So that's why we have to be really careful where the attention is going, and where the mind is going, because mind is a prime ruler of the senses. The mind is actually directing the senses in a particular direction. But sometimes what might happen is the senses might also direct the mind in a particular direction. Indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham mana. It is mentioned by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham mana. So even though a person might be trying to forcefully control the mind would sometimes drag one particular sense, and then one has actually gone into a direction of totally identifying with the material existence. So therefore Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, yato yato nischarati manaschanchalam astiram tatastata niyamyetat atmanyeva vasham nayet. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that yato nischarati, whenever the mind is going off, manaschanchalam astiram. So the mind is chanchalam. Chanchala it's not staying at one place. So if you're trying to focus the mind on remembering Krishna, we might focus for a second, and then the next second the mind is going somewhere else. So what Krishna says is, indriya, so yato nischarati manaschanchalam astiram tatas tatat niyamyaitat atmanyeva vasham nayet. So whenever one notices that the mind is drifting off, one brings it back. Atmanyeva vasham nayet. Bring it back to oneself. So every time, so the most important thing here is noticing that it is drifting off. When we notice, then we can actually bring it back. But if we don't notice at all, where is the question of bringing it back? And what happens in the cases where one is totally indulgent in sense gratification is that one does not notice the drifting at all. One becomes one with whatever is that experience. If one is in that state of existence where one becomes totally one with a kind of experience, then when the noticing is lost. So the noticing is that's what we are calling at sakshi bhava, being an observer. And in that state of being an observer, one notices that I am not the mind. But when one totally indulges in the sense gratificatory activity, one has become one with the mind, and then the sakshi bhava has disappeared, because that sakshi, the observer becomes the observed, and then and then there is no observer then. But if one knows that the observed and the observer are different, then one can actually bring back one can bring back what is being observed into the understanding that this is different from me. And of course, all this is mainly the philosophy of jnana, from the perspective of knowledge. But when one is in love of Lord, then this philosophy of knowledge is not that much useful, because the love is something that transcends everything else. Prema pumartho mahan. So it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, not Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It is one of the statements that is describing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, which is Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, that Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport when he begins this purport. So in that philosophy, that is where it is said, Aradhya Bhagavan Varajesha Tanaya Tadhamam Vrindavanam Ramya Kachid Upasana Vrajavadhu Argena Kalpita. So what kind of worship should one do to Krishna, as the gopis of Vrindavan did for Krishna? So the gopis of Vrindavan were always thinking of Krishna. Even though they were householders, they had their own husbands and kids and everyone else. Their mind was always on Krishna. Savai manaha Krishna padaravindayo, as it is mentioned about Kulashekara Alvar. Their mind was always vachamsi vaikuntha gunanu varnane. They were always talking about Krishna. What is Krishna doing now? They were always singing about Krishna's pastimes. So this is something. So that's why the bhakti is totally transcendental. It is jnana karmadi anavritam. It has no trace of jnana marga and karma marga. Bhakti is pure love for the Lord. It has no trace of trying to understand the Lord through Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavān. There is nothing. Of course, depending on the type of the living entity, one would have different inclinations, and that is fine. But when one comes to the topmost state of bhakti, the only thing one knows is that Krishna is my friend, or Krishna, I am the servant of Krishna. The Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. Like Daruka, who was the charioteer of Krishna. So he is in the Dasya Bhava. Or Sri Hanumanji, who is a servitor of Lord Sri Ram, Dasya Bhava. And then there is Sakhya Bhava, as a friend of Krishna, Arjuna, Uddhava. And it's quite interesting, like in the Mahabharata, we have Śrīmad-Bhāgavad Gita, where Krishna gave the message of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And then in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, we have Uddhava Gita, where Krishna gave, again, very specific, very beautiful instructions in terms of the wonderful nature of pure devotional service to Uddhava. And so they are his friends. Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam yetaduttamam. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, he says to Arjuna that because you are my devotee and you are my friend, you will be able to understand this secret. And the secret cannot be understood by someone else. If someone does not recognize the personality of Krishna, how can they understand Krishna's words in the true sense? Yeah. So So that's why Krishna says, Naham prakasha sarvasya, yogamaya samavrita, mudhoyam nabhijanati mamebhya paramavayam. So this is the transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mukti dadachi karechid smana bhakti yogam. It is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that Krishna can sometimes award liberation, but very rarely does he give pure devotional service. Because when he gives pure devotional service, he comes under the control of the living entity. Liberation means it's liberation. It is one is totally in a totally out of this cycle of birth and death, which is wonderful. It is not easy. But the loving devotional service, pure loving devotional service to the Lord, is something that is extraordinary. It is that's why it is called. So we were talking about the different aspects mentioned in the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The first is that the supreme worshipable Lord is the son of Vrajesha or Nanda Maharaj, Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanaya. Where does he stay? Where does he stay? Tad Dhamam Vrindavanam. He stays in Vrindavan Dham. How can he be reached? Ramya Kachid Upasana Vrajavadvargena Yakalpita. He can be reached if one has got that loving affection as the gopis of Vrindavana. That is the spiritual phone number of the Lord. If we have that loving devotional attitude as the gopis of Vrindavana, Ramya Kachid Upasana Vrajavadvargena Yakalpita, then what are the different means by which one can understand the Lord? Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Amalam Puranam. So through Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is a spotless Purana, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prema Pumartho Mahan. And the last thing that is mentioned is that love for the Lord is transcendental. It transcends the Chatur Purusharthas. In the Vedas, it is mentioned about the 4 kinds of activities that one can do in the human form of life. The first is dharma, which is religiosity. Then there is artha, which is the economic development. Then there is kama, sense gratification. And then 4th is moksha. So dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. This is the Chatur Purusharthas that are mentioned in the Vedas. So this is something that is happening in the human form of life, where one can engage in religiosity, and then one does the economic development. Then through the economic development, one gets a sense gratification, and then one goes into the state of liberation. If one has got that inclination for liberation, that is very rare actually. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhayet yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam meti tattvata. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, billions and billions of living entities, but very few among them are engaging their energy to attain perfection. What is this perfection? The perfection is knowing our eternal nature. So when the energy is focused on knowing our eternal nature, then we are in that state of, we are going in the state of liberation. Ihayasya haredasya karmana manasa gira nikilasu api avasthasu jivan mukta sauchyate. It is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that even though one might be in this material world, having a material body, but if one is doing through karmana, manasa, and gira, through the activities, through the mind, and through the speech, if one is engaging in Krishna service, nikilasva api avasthasu jivan mukta sauchyate. Even though one is staying in this material world with a material body, one is liberated from that. So that is the power of devotional service. So it is totally independent of where one is existing. That is called apratihata. It cannot be checked under any circumstance. That is pure devotional service. whatever be the circumstance, if one has got that love for the Lord, the circumstances doesn't matter. One can be like the best example is again Kulashekar Alvar. He was the king of emperor of the whole world, but so he was totally staying within luxury. Whatever he wanted was available for him. If we want to say from the current perspective, the richest person in the world. But his mind was always focused on Krishna. Savai manaha Krishna padaravinde. Vachamsi vaikunta gunanvarane. Karo harer mantra marjanadishu. Shrutim chakara chuta satkathodaya. His hands were engaged in worshipping the Lord. His ears were engaged in hearing about the Lord. Mukunda lingalaya darshane drisho. So tadbhritya gatra sparsha anga sangamo. So it is all mentioned. So whatever senses and whatever his eyes were engaged in looking at the wonderful deities of the Lord. His tongue was engaged in tasting the food offered to the Lord. So everything, his legs are engaged in circumambulating the places of the Lord. So even though he was totally in a luxurious environment, because his mind was totally focused on Krishna, he was totally unaffected by it. As we said, Padma Patra Ivambasa, the lotus leaf, the lotus petal, just like that. And so this is the wonderful nature of love for the Lord. And that is what we see in Vidura. And we see in this verse, actually, when we look at this verse, a beautiful verse, Yadva ayaṁ mantra-kṛd. So if you look at the synonyms of this, the house, what else is there to say? I am Śrī Kṛṣṇa, mantra-kṛd, minister, you people. So Vidura was the minister there in the Dhritarashtra's reign. Dhritarashtra was the king, and Vidura was the minister. And we see here, but then he was always supporting the Pandavas. This was because Vidura is Mahatma. He is totally surrendered onto Krishna. His allegiance was towards the Pandavas, even though he was a minister there for Dhritarashtra, but he was always protecting the Pandavas. So this is bhagavān akhileśvaraḥ. The next line, that is a beautiful statement there. Akhileśvaraḥ. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord of everything. Akhila. Akhileśvaraḥ. So he is Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Mruchati. That is Akhileśvaraḥ. Sarvabhuta Maheshwaram. Jagannath. So he is the Lord of the whole universe. So this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavān akhileśvaraḥ. So he is Bhagavān akhileśvaraḥ. He can, he is present everywhere. He can go anywhere. But pauravendra-gṛhaṁ hitvā. The next line again is wonderful. So he did not go to Duryodhana's house. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, whatever way one approaches the Lord reciprocates accordingly. So Duryodhana's unfortunate situation was that he was in that state of envy and arrogance and ignorance. It was actually ignorance which is the basis of all the other unwanted qualities. If there is ignorance of our eternal nature, then there is this false ego. The false ego. So we are talking about the pancha-kleshas, which was avidya. It starts with ignorance. Then there is asmita. The asmita is what is the false ego. So one is thinking that one is this external body or the mind or whatever is happening. So that is asmita. And because of that, there is raga and dvesha. Raga is attachment and dvesha is repulsion. So depending on whatever consciousness I have, and the consciousness by itself is pure, but the impressions on the consciousness, that is part of the subtle body. The subtle body is mind, intelligence, and false ego. So the false ego and the mind and the intelligence has been accumulating lots and lots of impressions since time immemorial. We don't know when it has begun. Anadi Bahirmukha Jeev. It is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita that the Anadi, there is no beginning. Bahirmukha, the living entity has been facing away from Krishna. Jeev, Jiva is the living entity. So Krishna bhuli gela. Somehow or other have forgotten Krishna. Atev Krishna Ved Puran Karela. It is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita that because since time immemorial, the living entity has been looking away from Krishna, Bahirmukha. So there is Antarmukha. Antarmukha is facing the Lord, and Bahirmukha is facing away from the Lord. So that particular verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita says that since time immemorial, the living entity is not facing Krishna and forgotten Krishna. Therefore, the Vedas and Puranas are existing, so that one can remind oneself about the Lord always. And then that is Antarmukha. When we are looking inside, then when we are looking inside, we are noticing that the Lord is present in the heart of all the living entities. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishta matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, that I am in the heart of all the living entities. So what is happening is, because there is this impressions that has been existing since time immemorial, and it is continuing as well. There is Kutastha Phalonmukha and Aprarabdha Phalam Proktam Kutastha Phalonmukha Kramenaiva Praliyate Vishnu Bhakti Ratatman Nam. So it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam all the different types of fruitive activities that have been happening. Aprarabdha Phalam Proktam Kutam Bijam Phalonmukha. So what that means is, so depending on the activities that we have done, the current conditions are manifesting. And depending what the activities we are doing in the present moment, the future conditions will be manifesting. So constantly this is going on. So, and that is what is karma. The karma, therefore Krishna mentions karmano hi bodhavyam cha vikarmana akarmanascha bodhavyam gahano hi karmana gati. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, one has to know what is activity, karmano hi bodhavyam. One has to know what is bad activities, and one has to know what is no activity. The no activity is the state of pure devotional service. What happens in the pure devotional? There is nishkama. So it is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, bhukti mukti siddhi kama sakale ashanta. Someone who is after fruitive activities, bhukti kami. Someone who wants liberation, mukti kami. Bhukti mukti siddhi. Someone who is after perfection, the yogic siddhis, that is siddhi kami. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakale ashanta. All are not peaceful. Why? Because they are wanting something. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Teva Shanta. The devotee of the Lord does not have any desire, Nishkama, and therefore one is peaceful. So, no material desires. If there is a desire, it is only spiritual. Tatra laulyam api ekalam moolam. Janma koti sukritirna labhyate. Srila Rupa Goswami, it is mentioned in a verse, Srila Rupa Goswami mentions that so there is a greed where one wants to attain lot of material acquisitions. That is in the mode of passion. But there is a greed, laulyam, spiritual greed, and that is to love the Lord. Somehow or other, I want to keep loving the Lord. So this is the cost one has to pay for pure loving devotional service to Krishna. Tatra laulyam api ekalam mulya. That spiritual greed. Janma koti sukritir na labhyate. One might keep performing pious activities for unlimited lifetimes, but still one might not attain pure devotional service. Because pure devotional service is based on us developing that love for the Lord, that attachment to the Lord. So, Maya sakta manah partha yogam yunjam madashrayam asamshayam samagram mam yathajñāsasi tatshrunu. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, when one is attached oneself, one's mind to the Lord, mai asakta mana, asakta, attached. So instead of the senses attaching themselves to the sense objects, one is attaching the mind to the Lord. And when the mind is attached to the Lord, the senses are automatically going to the Lord. So that's why Krishna says, Mai asakta mana partha. Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. So Krishna says, give your mind to me. What does it mean, giving mind to Krishna? Remembering the Lord, remembering his pastimes. And today is Gopashtami as well. So it's a very wonderful day in terms of remembering that now Krishna is taking the cows as well to the pasture. Earlier he was taking the calves. And from Gopashtami onwards, he's taking the cows as well. And then this is all the pastimes of the Lord. There are unlimited pastimes of the Lord. And there are unlimited festivals as well. And one can always focus the mind in those pastimes. And so that is the mind being focused. Man manabhava, mad bhakta, become my devotee. Madhyaji mam namaskuru. Offer your obeisances to me, offer your prayers to me. Mame vaishyasi satyam te. Krishna says that you'll surely come back to me, Arjuna. And this is the truth. When you do this. And why am I telling this to you? Pratijane priyosime. Because you are very dear to me, Krishna, Arjuna. I'm telling this to you. So this is the wonderful, very confidential knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. That man manabhava. Give your mind to me. And that is what Mahatma Vidur always does. He's in that state of always remembering the Lord. And therefore, it is mentioned here, praviveśātmasāt kṛtam. So, entered, identify with oneself, he accepted. So this is the verse which is spoken by Maitreya Rishi to Mahatma Vidur. And what is Maitreya Rishi saying? Yadva ayaṁ mantra-kṛd bhagavān akhileśvaraḥ pauravendra-gṛhaṁ hitvā praviveśātmasāt kṛtam. What else is there to say about the residential house of the Pāṇḍavas? Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the Lord of everything, acted as your minister. He used to enter that house as if it were his own, and he did not take any care of Duryodhana's house. And Mahatma Vidur was also staying in that house, and Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport here that this whole chapter is about Mahatma Vidur going on pilgrimage, and in that pilgrimage he has met Maitreya Rishi, and both of them are discussing about Krishna. And so Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that the Vidura was in that place where Krishna was always there. So, and wherever Krishna is, that place is not different from Krishna. This is the wonderful nature, spiritual nature of the spiritual world, that the Lord, his name, his form, his residence, his entourage, his associates are not different from him. They're different and non-different. That is achintya bheda veda tattva. Simultaneously one and different. So in that situation, he actually did not need to leave his place because the Lord himself was there at his place. And that place has become like Vrindavana because Krishna was there. But here, Srila Prabhupada mentions, it's a very wonderful statement that we can conclude with. As mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he says, for a saintly person like Vidura, any disturbance due to worldly affairs is insignificant. Such disturbances, however, are sometimes favorable for higher realization. And therefore, Vidura took advantage of a family misunderstanding in order to meet Maitreya Rishi. So this is it reminds us of that wonderful prayer from Kunti Devi, and then we can conclude with that prayer, where Kunti Devi says that Vipadata santu ta shashvat tatra tatra jagat guru bhavato darshanam yatsyat apunar bhava darshanam. So Kunti Devi is saying that, oh Lord, let these calamities keep befalling on us, because when they are befalling, you are personally present with us. And that was what was happening in the Pandavas. Whenever they were having calamities, Krishna personally came and rescued them. So she's saying that when you come and when we see your lotus feet, we don't see the cycle of birth and death. So therefore, I don't mind these calamities coming upon us always. So this is the pure loving devotional service to the Lord, where one is only focused on loving the Lord and everything else is of no importance. So with that prayer that we can always remember the Lord at every moment, I would like to conclude this discussion. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Desha Tarine. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Krishne Matirastu. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.